Ladies and gentlemen, our next event of the evening is a one-fall match with a 60-minute time limit.
This is where the big boys play, huh?
This is where the big boys play.
Go on.
Are you ready?
Yep, go on.
Thank you. Oh, you ready? Thank you for listening to Where the Big Boys Play podcast. This is part 2 of our discussion of the Great American Bash 1987.
Thanks a lot, Chad.
Okay, I think that's going to be my routine go-to line. It did sound totally terrible on the other one, so sort of wrote it down verbatim. Just switch up the name. It's like the Road Dogg when he would introduce the New Age Outlaws. He'd go through his spell and just have to change the name of the city.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next match. We've got the Freebirds. That is Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Roberts here, all three of them, as faces against Ivan Koloff, Manny Fernandez, and Paul Jones. Now you may be wondering, where is Vladimir Pietrov? Why isn't he tagging with Ivan Koloff? And I couldn't help but notice that in the Wrestling Observer, Meltzer tells us that Pietrov has some legal problems. So I followed this up. What were Pietrov's legal problems? Well, he was convicted of selling cocaine and running an illicit massage parlor called the Golden Carrot in Richfield, Minnesota, and he received 15 years in prison. Now, he was released in 1991, and his Wikipedia entry claims that he worked for WWF, but after some time searching around, that appears that it was not true. Petrov never wrestled again after coming out. He was just done with the wrestling business after his stint in jail. Now, there's two little trivia points about Pietrov. Firstly, he was actually a last-minute replacement for John Nord, also known as the Berserker in WWF, who was originally going to be the new partner for Ivan Koloff, but for whatever reason backed out at the last minute. So they found this guy who was working as a bouncer and gave him the gig instead. And the other thing is that his wife is known as Cara Nelson. Have you heard of Cara Nelson, Chad?
I have not.
She is a female bodybuilder who specializes in making videos where she beats up smaller men, and I think these videos are of a kinky nature. So, so Cara Nelson is apparently in that kind of female bodybuilder, slightly kind of pervy world of men who like female bodybuilders, is apparently one of the biggest stars in that arena. So there we are. And Pietrov, his real name's Al Blake, kind of, I think, works, helps her do that and manages her. So that's where Pietrov is. So as this match starts, Michael Hayes really plays to the crowd. He does a strut, he does a moonwalk, which a very impressive moonwalk. Then he stomps, and he actually does a pretty effective job of pumping up the crowd here. Manny Fernandez is not impressed, but Hayes gives him 2 body slams, stomps some more. He wants Paul Jones to come in, gives Fernandez an arm bar, tags in Roberts, who works the arm some more. I thought Roberts was looking a bit old and flabby at this point. Do you agree with that, Ted?
Yeah, he looked like he was on his way down. I love Buddy, but even, I mean, I don't know how old he was here, but even in 1982 in World Class, he looked like he was 50 years old in his face. But here he definitely looked old and on the way down as far as athletic-wise.
Yeah, definitely. He seemed like he was probably too old to be in this match. Having said that, I mean, Ivan Koloff is also in the other corner, still wrestling. So we get Roberts is going to be our facing trouble here, and Ivan Koloff comes in on offense. Then we get Jones, then we get Gordy, and there's pandemonium, and the ref has just lost control of this one. Gordy gets the 3 on Jones in the middle of all this chaos after an elbow and a leg drop. What did you think of this match?
Quickly, I just looked it up, and Buddy would have been 43 when this match happened. He retired the next year, so this was kind of the end of the road.
He looks at least 10 years older than 43.
Yeah, well, like I said, in 1982, he'd have been 37, and he looked like my grandfather in these matches. I mean, he looks 50, 55 years old. This match, heavily clipped again. I love the Freebirds. They're one of my personal favorites, especially Michael Hayes. Yeah. Just a great, larger-than-life character. I actually thought Ivan and Manny and Paul Jones weren't as offensive as we had seen them in other events, in other shows. So what we saw here, which again was only about 3 minutes, hot tag to Terry Gordy, was not much to it. Was kind of interesting to see the Freebirds' faces, just because most of the time I associate them first and foremost as heels, but to see them as faces, obviously they're from Bad Street, USA, which is Atlanta, Georgia. That's where they're billed from. So kind of a hometown pop when they win. So it was nothing offensive.
No, I mean, it was perfectly fine. I think Hayes is one of the best at working a crowd, and you can see that at the start of this match.
Yeah, he can really, talk about, somebody that we just talked about, Murdoch, that, is very good at that too, but Hayes is just masterful at really being able to rile up a crowd, either for or against him, almost to near riot. He has that ability just in his personality and the way he conveys himself to really get a crowd worked up.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've never understood about Hayes, how is this guy that we see here, responsible for what we see on TV now? Because he's like the head of their creative team or something, right?
Well, he's mainly one of the head writers for SmackDown.
Right.
He's on the SmackDown writing staff, which has had some good, solid programming, just nothing groundbreaking. I think he kind of associates that show with his, with a kind of territory type show where everything's kind of, it's kind of tough to explain, but there's a lot of low tech. I mean, if you watch current WWE programming, there's no mistaking what's the A show in the minds of, the higher ups in WWE. It's Raw.
Yeah.
So, he seems to be working with SmackDown a couple of years ago with longer wrestling matches, kind of simpler angles. I think he's still doing a decently effective job. I think he would work better with somebody else that he could, really play off ideas of. I know Christus Joseph, when he was a head writer there, he worked a lot with SmackDown. So I think Michael Hayes definitely has a place where he could be a good asset currently, even on the writing team. But as far as being a showrunner or the main person, maybe not.
Yeah. No, but I was just thinking more generally, a lot of the problems, in fact, there's been a thread today where people are talking about the problems with current WWE on Pro Wrestling Only, and a lot of them are kind of very easy to see. And I've seen Hayes is on pretty much all of those Legends of Wrestling roundtable shows, and he's fairly open and critical of certain things on that show, so he can obviously see them, but at the same time he's one of the people who's responsible for the output. So can't he do something about fixing it? But,
yeah, I just think it's very tough to really. It's one of those things where that's really been talked about lately, and you see the threads every once in a while on how to change the current product, and quite simply, I just think you won't know it till it's there. You know what I mean? It's not like in 1993, everybody was sitting around talking about how we needed an NWO type angle or a Stone Cold type character. It's just there's certain things, moments in time, I think, where characters catch on. That's not to give WWE a pass, because I think they've definitely had some instances in the last couple of years with the Nexus angle and with Punk, kind of going off the rails last year with his shoot angle stuff, where they had, especially in that Punk angle, they had great potential to maybe build up to something like that, and then got cold feet and shied away from it. But just in the way the product is run now, everybody's faced everybody else. There's just not much you can do with what's currently there.
Yeah, I wonder if to some extent where the wrestling is just broken as well. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I do think that's tough, especially for us and somebody that's watched a ton of wrestling. I know I feel that sometimes, where it feels like you get a sense of we've seen everything there is to see here.
Yeah.
I do think that's part of it, but I definitely think there's a window where wrestling could create new fans. It just have to be the right act or angle that would catch fire.
Okay, yeah, I guess all of these points have been talked about a million times. Don't have a pay-per-view every month, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, it's just tough to see. There's a pay-per-view this Sunday is in Atlanta, and I'm not going, and quite frankly, not even excited about it. Even though just to sort of totally detour the Great American Bash Show, there is a new matchup. You do have Ryback facing CM Punk for the title, which is in some ways kind of interesting to see what they do and how they play that, because it does feel like a point of no return type match where they either have to go all in on this new character, or he's going to be greatly damaged if he loses, I think, to Punk right out of the gate in his first major chance. So in that respect, it is interesting to see. But then just the other matches on the card, while I'm sure the wrestling will be very good, the Sheamus versus the Big Show interests me none. Randy Orton versus Alberto Del Rio. I have no idea how many times them people have faced each other, but it feels like it's about 100.
Yeah.
It feels like we've seen that match. You could tell me they've only wrestled twice. You could tell me they've wrestled 25 times, and I wouldn't be surprised either way. And I think that's more of a problem, more than how many times they actually have wrestled. It just really feels like these are the same two people just going out there because we have nothing else better. They just circle around each other.
Yeah, I mean, you've got this weird thing where the WWE is still set up as if it's fighting the Monday Night Wars. Obviously, it's not. Do you know what I mean? The entire structure.
Yeah, yeah.
TV is,
what they did. Catch a lot of the show Monday, more than I probably had in a couple of months, just because I got real burnout. There's some, and I really enjoyed the tag team matchups, and it seemed like they were doing some different stuff. But Monday night they had a champion versus champion match, which there's no reason for your two world champions to be fighting each other on a Monday night. And it got the second lowest rating of the year. So what does that tell you? I mean, that obviously did not work. Nobody cared that it's champion versus champion. That's been so diminished because of how many times they've done it that's a non-factor now.
Yeah.
And it can get depressing, no doubt.
Yeah, and the fact that half of each of the rosters have both been champ at some point as well. Do you know what I mean?
Right, sure.
Anyway, we could talk all day about the ills of the current product. I only catch like one or two shows, every few months, but for a long time, whatever I see just depresses me, and it just confirms everything I've thought for almost a decade now. Anyway, let's get back to the Great American Bash. I have a couple more Meltzer notes here. This tour was a great financial success for Crockett, apparently. The Orange Bowl show was a record gate for South Florida, drawing 16,000. And what else happened around this time? Paul Bosch retired at the age of 74 after 50 years in the business. He only booked 4 shows for Vince, then sold his company to Titan. So that move of Paul Bosch didn't last long, and he retired. Apparently, he wasn't having fun anymore, booking and whatnot. So he gave up. And then Mike Graham, who tragically committed suicide very recently. He apparently no-showed this show, as did a number of other people, including Blackjack Mulligan. So that there were, Meltzer says that there was an unusual amount of people who no-showed the kind of Bash tour. Okay, so the next match here was the main event at the Memorial Stadium, the Charlotte show, Dusty Rhodes versus Tully Blanchard, for, get this, $100,000. In a, I guess the modern fan would see this as a Money in the Bank match, wouldn't they, or something? This money is dangling in a sack above the ring, which they have to climb. They have to get a ladder to climb up it. And the ring is surrounded by barbed wire. What is a? Have I got this wrong? Is a Money in the? They do have to get it from a. It's like an old ladder match, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean the Money in the Bank. They hang a briefcase. Same type of concept as this match, essentially, except and the Money in the Bank is a contract, which is kind of ironic. Yeah. That they call it Money in the Bank, but it's just, I guess, you guaranteeing, a world title match, anytime, any place.
Well, this was like a sack with a dollar sign on there.
Yeah, this was a sack hanging down. Looked like almost if you could jump real high, a high jump, you could reach it just from the ring.
Something greatly amused me at the start of this match, which was that Dusty Rhodes was announced at 285 pounds, which is utter bullshit, which is ridiculous.
Weighing 285 pounds from Austin, Texas, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
He can't be 285 pounds, can he?
I would say unless Dusty's about 5'4", he is north of 285. Speaking from somebody that's, I'm 6'1", about 255 pounds currently. By no means have an Adonis physique, but I would wager to say it's better than Dusty's, and so I would say Dusty at least would have more than 30 pounds on me in that regard.
Yeah. I think that's a bullshit that he's 285, and I'm guessing that it was Dusty himself who announced me it that way.
Yeah, definitely a possibility. Did you hear what Tully was billed at? That would have been interesting.
It wasn't
if they billed Tully at 255 and Dusty at 2.
So this is a lights out match, which is basically a ladder match as far as I can see. There's barbed wire all around the ring. There's some sort of backstory here where because we've seen these two have a number of these money matches in the past few shows, and apparently J.J. Dillon stole the 10 grand from the match that they had before. So now somehow this is escalated. I think I think they signed a match where the heels had to wager a certain amount. And now this has become 100 grand somehow. Wyndham is in Dusty's corner. Both guys are in street clothes here. Some dude in the crowd has got some kind of machine. Did you hear this? There's like an odd 80s arcade tune coming from somewhere.
I did not catch that.
Yeah, I couldn't help but notice it. I think it was like one of those. I don't know if you remember them. Maybe you're too young, but there were these kind of like learning aid tools that you could get from Toys R Us, and they were sort of computer learning aid things, and they played music that sounded like this box. Maybe you don't remember what I was on about. Did you ever see those?
No, I think that's before my time.
Yeah, like they teach you how to like add up or read or count or whatever it was.
Okay.
Dusty scrapes Tully's arm against the barbed wire. Now he scrapes Tully's face against it. This is pretty grisly. Dusty has a ladder to try to get the money. Quite unusual seeing a ladder match in 1987. Dusty gets a DDT on Tully. Tony again calls it that bulldog maneuver. Seemingly JR is not with him at this point. Tully goes up the ladder, but Dusty brings him back down. Tully puts on a black glove and nails Rhodes in his injured eye with it. J.J. Dillon comes in and gives Tommy Young a punch. Dusty kicks the ladder from under Tully. What else happens here? He gets the glove and he nails Tully with the glove and gets the money. I thought this match, considering the setup, could have been a lot more brutal. What did you think?
I actually thought. The idea of Dusty Rhodes in a ladder match is a terrifying thought.
He's a lean 285.
Yeah. As much kudos as you got to give Dusty for thinking up war games, you have to wonder what the thought process was for him coming up with this match. As far as the actual match, what we saw was not bad. The setup up to the final spots to the ladder was actually pretty good and better than I thought, with the arm work and the Dusty eye stuff that kind of comes into play with the Starcade angle. But then we get the actual ladder spots, which were very awkward. This is the early infancy stages of ladder matches, so most of the spots were awkward. Dusty climbing was extremely awkward and shaky. And again, the way this money was hanging down, I think he only had to go up about 2 or 3 steps on the ladder to grab the money, so it wasn't exactly, a feat. It wasn't like Jeff Hardy, climbing up 15 feet to come off a ladder.
Yeah.
So this was not bad, but not very good either.
Meltzer is extremely critical of this match, and he actually says that people were walking out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a little of, just kind of a little smarky, at this time. I mean, the pop was obviously pretty big when Dusty won.
Yeah.
I think that's a little too critical of this match. I mean, I didn't think it was a travesty or anything, but, definitely not something memorable either.
Did you happen to spot a black woman who was hanging out with Tully here? That was Dark Journey. Apparently, she was a valet with a horseman who was fired around this time. She only lasted...
she comes out with them in the War Games too, right?
Yeah. She I think she was fired the night after the Miami show.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I don't think she made it after that. Apparently, she was just bringing nothing to the table at all. And I mean, I guess they didn't need a valet, did they?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly didn't see anything from her on this tape. I couldn't even pick her out of the lineup.
So in the next match, we get another cage match now, and it's Jimmy Garvin versus Ric Flair for the world title. And if Flair wins, he gets to spend a night with Precious, which is a little bit creepy. David Crockett is on commentary with Tony Schiavone. Obviously, right at the start of the match, we get a very blatant clip, and Garvin is on top, giving some chops. We get the low blow from Flair, using that move a lot in 1987. Seemingly, it's the signature low blow yet again. We get a snapmare from Flair. He goes to the top, gets thrown down. Garvin gets 2 for that. Puts on the figure 4, gets 2 for it. Really cinches in that figure 4 and gets another 2. So series of near falls. Flair rakes the eyes to gain control. Goes for a suplex, but sees it reversed into a roll up for 2. Flair gives a couple of Flair chops and a gut punch, but Garvin comes back. Flair begs off, eats the cage twice, and he's really bloodied now. We get a bit of cheese grater action. He gets his head bashed into the cage twice more. Then Garvin punches Flair in the head 10 times. Garvin's very dominant here, I think. So much so that Flair tries to escape the ring. He actually tries to climb over the cage and escape, which is something we've seen him do before. The crowd goes absolutely wild, and I think that's because Garvin has pulled down Flair's trunks, and they can see his backside, Rick Rude style. We get some more cheese grater action. Flair is really getting his ass kicked in this match. Garvin just seems to be doing a routine leapfrog, and something happens and his leg gives way. It looks like he's pulled his knee, or his knee's gone out, which really didn't look planned to me. Flair then attacks the leg, and Garvin is just... this leg seems to be gone. It's like he can't walk on it at all. And his selling of this made me think that it was legit, but Meltzer didn't mention it at all in his kind of recap of the match. Ronnie Garvin comes out. Flair thrusts his pelvis at Precious in the manner of Wayne and Garth from Wayne's World. Flair kind of slows the action right down now, and he's enjoying punishing Garvin's injured leg. Hope spot is attempted, but Garvin tries to make a comeback, but his leg gives way in the middle of it. And I've just written here that if this isn't legit, I think this is a tremendous selling job from Jimmy Garvin. Flair hits a big knee drop on Garvin's knee, which looks like it hurt. Garvin screams out in pain. We get some big Flair chops now. Garvin fights back. Flair attempts another cage escape. The crowd is absolutely losing their shit yet again at the sight of Flair's exposed rear end. Garvin gets 2, and the crowd is really stoked now. He goes for a brain buster, but the leg gives way. This gives Flair the chance to put on the figure 4. He pulls on the top rope for leverage, and then someone jumps on the ring. I couldn't work out. Was that a fan or was it Ronnie?
I think that was a fan.
It was a fan, right? Trying to get in the ring.
The way he got yanked down, and not making a notion. I mean, he really came out of nowhere and really almost scaled up into the cage, and I couldn't even see who dragged him down. I know he kicked somebody off, but then somebody in a suit. I guess, I don't know if Doug Dillinger was around at this time, but the security comes in and they slugged him around. But he was close to getting in the cage, which was amazing. And, you know, as he's getting taken away, you can't really see because the camera's on the other side, but Flair is staring at him. I don't know if he was barking at him or what, but that was an interesting scene.
Yeah, I've only ever seen that once before, and it's the Randy Savage versus Ted DiBiase cage match from '88. I think it's from the it's either from MSG or the WrestleFest show. I think it's MSG from that year, and a fan actually jumps on the cage, and he actually attacks Virgil as well in that particular match. But this was I actually thought it might be Ronnie Garvin for a while because it was really hard to tell because you know the sort of clothes he was wearing were the clothes that Ronnie Garvin would wear.
Yeah.
But I think I spotted Garvin was kind of actually standing there watching what was going on. So
yeah, Garvin's on the on a different side of the cage, kind of rattling the cage, you know, pumping it up and down. But this is the actual finish of the match.
Yeah, so basically Flair wins as Garvin passes out with pain, and Flair gets to spend, in theory, he gets to spend his night with Precious. Then Ron Garvin hits the ring and attacks him, and Flair leaves with the belt. Now, this match, for some reason, is really shit on by a lot of the reviews I've read, and I don't necessarily see why. Especially in the Scott Keith. I mean, obviously you need to take Scott Keith with a pinch of salt, but he's just got it in his mind that both Ronnie Garvin and Jimmy Garvin absolutely suck. So he's not happy to kind of give anything they do credence. But I actually thought the story of this match was quite interesting. What did you think, Chad?
I mean, I like this match a good bit also. One little anecdote before I talk about this match is in 1999 I went and saw a house show in Mobile, Alabama, and it was headlined by Flair versus Sting. And the spot that happened when Flair escaped the cage happened in this match where he had his pants pulled down and showed his ass to the entire crowd and was running around. So we're talking about, 50-year-old Flair at this point in time. And this was one of the few shows we were on vacation for spring break, my whole family. So my mom actually went to this show along with my dad and my brother, and you kind of talk about these moments where sometimes we're embarrassed to be wrestling fans, and I think as long as I live, I'll remember the look on my mom's face by seeing this 50-year-old man's ass. He did a complete circle around the ring, strutting with his pants pulled down, which was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life.
Had he kind of started to sag at that point?
Yeah, I mean, she just gave me a look like, I can't believe you watched this crap. But as far as this match, up to Garvin's leg going out, I thought it was fine, but nothing extraordinary. Garvin's leg going out, and then the way Flair works over it, and the sense of urgency that you hear from the crowd and the viciousness shown by Flair, I thought was really well done. I think I don't think it was legit. I think Garvin did an excellent sell job of his leg. Flair really played that up. His pelvic thrust at Precious was awesome. And just the last, I guess, 10 minutes of the match really catapulted the match into a real, from a good match to, I thought this was a great match, what we saw. I don't like to sing the thing in full.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. My only criticism would be that Garvin really kicks Flair's ass at the start of it. I mean, he doesn't just, he's not just on top, he's really beating Flair up pretty, I think he's actually he makes him look a bit of he may even make him look weak, I mean, I know Flair tends to work from, from the bottom quite a lot, but this seemed quite a severe beating in the first portion of the match.
I don't know, I mean, Jimmy Garvin versus Ric Flair on paper, I don't know how many people really bought Garvin having a chance going in, so maybe this was done to establish that he could win the match.
Maybe.
If it was done that way, but yeah, he does really gain the advantage right up to when his knee goes out on the leapfrog spot.
I've never if that was planned though. I've never I can't remember too many matches where I've seen a kind of trying to sell a legit injury that isn't caused by the opponent. That was quite an interesting thing to try.
It happens a couple times, and when it's done, I've seen it done a couple times, and when it's done well, it's really done well. And this was a case where it was really done well.
Yeah, and he really saw that leg well. Like you believe that he couldn't stand on it.
Right.
So anyway, the next match here, we got the Midnight Express, US champs, versus the Rock and Roll Express, world champs. Title versus title. Rock and Roll Express have Big Bubba in their corner. Jim Cornette is not there for some reason, and I couldn't actually figure out why he's not there. It's not mentioned in the ones. The Midnight Express are announced from the dark side. Gibson and Eaton lock up to start off with. Jim Ross is back on commentary. And he's really well placed, I think, to mention that this is one of the greatest rivalries the sport has ever known. Because obviously he would have seen a lot of this stuff in Mid-South, and he makes it feel like a big occasion, I think, with that comment. Schiavone gives a bit of analysis at the start here, and he says that in each exchange, Gibson was up before Eaton, which I thought was quite an interesting... Schiavone's got these moments where he sounds like a sports analyst. He only does it on occasion, but he has these, every once in a while he'll give an insight. And like he strikes me as a guy who might like baseball or something. Is that?
Well, he is a he does call the Atlanta Braves minor league games.
Does he?
Yeah, and he works at a radio station. He does the sports in the mornings. A lot of times when I'm driving to work, you hear, here's Tony Schiavone with the sports, and it cuts to Tony talking about the sports headlines. So I've always liked him as the analyst role.
Yeah. No, but he always comes across as a guy who's into sport. Anyway, Lane is in now, and he nails Gibson with a kick, but then eats an Inzaguri. I hope I haven't called that wrong. Morton comes in, and he gives an arm drag, and there's a series of kick-ups here, where Lane drags on his arm, shoves him down to the mat, and then he kicks back up. Anyway, Lane is down. Ricky goes for a pin, but only gets one. Bob Eaton comes in. Gibson's back in. We get an arm drag on Eaton. Morton comes back in, and then really strange spot where he stands on Eaton's shoulders. Did you see that? What was it?
Mm-hmm.
What was going on here? Yeah.
I don't know if he was trying to kind of flip through him, or he sort of just came over the top of him. It's kind of interesting, yeah. Not something you see very much.
We got a big...
Where he sort of went to the opposite side of him.
Yeah, it was all, he literally actually stood on his shoulders.
Yeah, he just like climbed over Eaton, literally, yeah.
We get a big backbreaker from Lane on Gibson. There's a double team now. Eaton knees Gibson to the outside, where he's nailed by Lane. Then we get the signature swift tags in and out, and some effective double teaming from the Midnights. Gibson fights back, but it's just a hope spot. But then he manages to roll. He does like a front roll away through and gets the tag to Morton. There's a double drop kick on Lane. The ref is all tied up. Big Bubba comes in. Bossman slam on Morton, but his hat comes off, and Tommy Young is about to do the 3 count, and he spots the hat and calls for the instant DQ, which is one of the best ref calls I've ever seen. So, in my view, this was a good but not great match. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, these guys have obviously had a ton of matches, ton of classic matches. We didn't get to see a lot here. What we saw, I'd agree with your assessment. It was good, not great. Just a couple of little interesting things would be that Gibson was the face in peril. I know most times I associate Ricky Morton in that role, so that was a little bit of a difference with this particular match, and he did a good job, I thought. Yeah. And then the finish I did think was clever. If you're going to do one of these kind of cheap finishes, I thought that was about as good as you could do it, where the referee is, sees the hat, he's not incompetent. And, I don't know if you noticed it, but as he was going to pin, Stan Lane kind of gets up on the apron and he's swiveling his hips, doing his dance.
Yeah. Because
he thinks they have the victory, and it's just a great moment when he realizes that they in fact lost the match.
Yeah,
he has a complete look of shock, which was really well done.
I like this hat business for 2 reasons. The first reason is that for once Tommy Young isn't a complete, the ref isn't a complete idiot here, and it's good to see that once in a while.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that it plays into this kind of narrative of Big Bubba being a little bit naive, and the fact that Jim Cornette isn't there to kind of, you get the impression that if Jim Cornette was there, he wouldn't have made that mistake. Do you know what I mean?
Right, yeah. That's a good assessment also.
So, finally we're onto the Orange Bowl in Miami, and we get War Games 2, The Explosion. Same face team, Superpowers and the Roadies, but they're taking on the 4 Horsemen and a masked man called the War Machine, who is a rather large-looking man with a beard. Who is that, Chad?
Big Boss Man.
It's Big Boss Man yet again. So yeah, I mean, the story here is that Dylan got injured in that first match, and they needed a sub, and War Machine came in. For a split second, I thought it might be Ole Anderson for some reason, because the beard seemed fuller than Bossman's, but obviously, yeah, it's Big Bubba.
Yeah, now I know before in the last show, Meltzer claimed that everybody knew it was Hector Guerrero at a Lasertron.
Yeah.
And that, I thought was kind of pretentious. But, here, I don't know how good of a look the crowd got, but for the beginning of the match, you get a pretty good close-up on the War Machine, and it was, it's pretty obvious that it's definitely Ray Traylor under the hood.
No, absolutely. And I was in kind of a couple, the only reason that I thought it couldn't be him is because he already had an on-screen role. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I thought it was weird that they'd use a kind of wrestler on the roster in a
Right.
masked man role and not make it into an angle in some way. And because of that, I was thinking, like, who could it be? It could be Ole Anderson, but obviously Ole Anderson's not as fat as that. And then I did thought crossed my mind that it could be One Man Gang, but
Yeah.
it's obviously Trailer. Anyway, yet again, it's Arn and Dusty to start. Shivani is on his own on commentary again. Dusty's on top, just as last time. Arn eats the cage several times, but then he swings the momentum by attacking Dusty's perennially injured leg. Anyway, Rhodes hits his DDT again. Arn hits a few punches. Dusty comes back with cheese grater action. We get a snap suplex inside the cage from Rhodes, which was a surprising spot. And then he goes into the figure 4. Tony mentions that he can't quit, and that the rope won't help, which I thought was a nice comment. A reminder that, this match can't end at this point, and Arn Anderson has to take the punishment. Dusty hits 8 elbows, but just as he's decimating Arn, the War Machine at 380 pounds is in. He's big, fat, and quite slow, and he was noticeably slower here than when he's Big Bubba, I think. Really slow in this match.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe because he's not used to working in a mask? I don't know. Could it
that may have been a problem which aggravated him. I know sometimes wrestlers have commented just with a cage, enclosed surface, it retains the heat. Obviously this show was in the middle of summer. I don't know how hot it was that night, but they're sweating pretty good with the cage and with the hood. That might have caused a good bit of discomfort for Bubba.
He just noticeably works this match slightly differently from his normal. He's noticeably slower, I thought. Anyway, he hits a knee from the top, which, as I was watching it again, made me think, well, is that Ole Anderson? Because I just, how many times has Big Bubba hit a knee from the top rope?
I don't know if that was a knee or a really terrible splash. I couldn't really make out. I think he actually might have been going for a splash on the Dusty's leg, but it looked awful.
It looked like a knee to me.
Yeah, it was pretty bad either way.
Hawk is in, and he drop kicks the War Machine. He gets a
right in the face.
Yeah, right in. Really good drop kick. He power slams Arn. He does his signature kind of flying fist drop thing that Hawk does. Do you know that fist drop that Hawk does? I've never understood how it wouldn't hurt him as well. Do you know what I mean? He does that fist drop where he hits it with the wouldn't he be taking out his own shoulder as he's landing that? Yeah,
that's a good point. Kind of a lapse in logic. At least his forearm. He kind of has to post his forearm when he falls down. It doesn't look like it'd feel great on his regard, but guess that's the risk he's willing to take.
Anyway, he gets a body slam on War Machine, which is some power. The faces are on top. We get a neck breaker from Hawk on Arn. Flair is in again, number 3 for his team. He double teams Hawk with Arn, and he nails them both with a double clothesline. We get another low blow from Flair, who's seemingly addicted to this move. Hawk eats the cage. Dusty Rhodes is in. No, Dusty Rhodes is already in the match. He hits Flair and War Machine with a flurry of fists and elbows. Flair has the figure 4 on Dusty as Nikita comes in, and he immediately takes a pile driver from Arn and no sells it. Now, considering his neck is injured, I was dubious about this no selling of a pile driver. and then he gets a sickle on Arn, and then no-sells all of Flair's right hands, and then sickles him. Flair's head is bashed into the cage 5 times. 10 punches on Flair's head by Dusty. 10 punches on Arn's head by Nikita. The faces are just on fire. Tully comes in and he goes after Hawk. Then he goes after Dusty, who Tony calls his arch enemy. And I guess they had been feuding for close to 3 years by this point.
Right.
Tully swings from the cage ceiling to kick Dusty in the mouth, which I thought was quite a clever little spot.
Yes.
The War Machine is really shit and slow during this match, and he takes a body slam from Dusty Rhodes. Animal comes in and nails absolutely everyone. There's just carnage, total carnage in the ring by this point. We get yet another low blow from Flair on Hawk, so there's 3 already in this match. Luger comes in, and before long he takes a shoulder block from Animal. There's basically too much going on now for me to note what's happening. There's just bodies everywhere. Paul Ellering comes in, and the match beyond starts. Ellering's got a spiked... Now, Tony consistently calls this a wristband, but it looks like a shoulder pad to me. Why does Tony call it a wristband?
Well, I think it was just like the little thing that they kind of connected to their wrists. Not kind of the traditional wristband. It's longer in length than that.
Yeah.
But it was the one, not like their shoulder pads or whatever, but the little they had these little wristbands that they did that kind of went up their forearm. I think that was one of those.
It was still pretty big though, and covered in spikes.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like one of the biker type wristband things. Not a, certainly not a traditional like wrestling wristband that you think of, like the taped wrist or something like that.
So the War Machine now takes 4 big clotheslines from all of the faces, apart from Ellering. Animal puts the spikes into War Machine's eye. Holy fuck. The bell goes and War Machine submits. We get a kind of ending montage with 80s music. And I couldn't help but notice as the credit rolled, but that Jim Riley is still on the credits. But he's still editing. But I've noticed he's been demoted from the sole editor to only one of several editors now.
Okay.
So the second War Games match. I thought the War Machine was terrible throughout this match, but was that enough to bring it down from being a 5-star classic in your view?
Yeah, it was for me. I don't think this one was as good in execution as the first one. Trading Ray Traylor for J.J. Dillon on paper, to me, I'd make that trade, but he really was a detriment in this match. Really slow with his offense, out of position a lot. I thought Hawk was a lot better in this match than in the first one, actually.
Yeah, he was.
But I thought Animal was worse, so that was kind of a trade-off.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a great match, just not as good as the original.
Yeah, I don't really understand why they put Trailer in there as the second man. I'd have definitely put him in the end. That was definitely curious. Was Luger even part of this match? What did Luger do in this match? I can't even remember.
Not much. I mean, this one, I don't know how long lengthwise, but it seemed like with this one, Luger was the last guy in, and in this match, it seemed like once the last guys were in, it was maybe 2 minutes to the end of the match, where in the other one, it seemed like we at least got a few minutes of action after that.
Yeah. I mean, typically guys give the first War Games match a 5-star rating, and then they'll give this one like a 4 3/4 rating. But I think the gap is bigger than that, personally.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, well, I think we've finally got to the end. Pretty good show overall. I think you'd agree. One of the better ones we've done.
I would say this and Starrcade '85 are probably the 2 best shows we've done.
Yeah, I mean this is definitely got. I mean, the fact that it's got more than one good match on it is something. And I think also that there's not many because we're seeing tour highlights. There's not many undercard guys who made it to tape. I was actually have you actually looked at those undercards? There are some very odd matches that we didn't get to see. Like for example, Kevin Sullivan versus Dory Funk Jr. was a part of the Miami show. Mike Rotunda versus Ivan Koloff. Um, where else was there? There was Chris Adams versus Black Bart. I mean, these are Lasertron versus Mod Squad Spike, who was on the Omni undercard. Sting versus Thunderfoot 1. So it's quite a lot of odd matches that didn't make it to tape. So, we're seeing highlights, and I think that probably bumps up the rating. We're
Right.
seeing several main events or kind of upper card matches rather than matches with Cheska Watley and people like that in them.
Yeah, this is one of the last kind of montage shows we'll watch, so they definitely kind of saved the best for last of this style type video release. But yeah, now from pretty much from here on out, we get complete shows, so
Yeah.
we'll see it all in all its glory.
It'd be nice to see a couple of interviews as well. That was one of the things that we haven't really seen any interviews really since Starcade '83. When was the last time we got a promo from someone?
Yeah, I think they may have done a couple of things Starcade '84, but I mean, I know Starcade '83 was pretty much like half the video was interviews, so
Yeah.
we're definitely a far ways from that.
But I guess we got the Clashes coming up, and there'll definitely be some promos on the Clash shows.
Yeah.
So I think we've reached the time to go through our end of show awards. So match of the tape, I guess.
No surprise. It's the first War Games for me. One of the best matches I think we've seen
Yeah.
going through these shows. Just a classic match. Structured perfectly and real satisfying conclusion.
Yeah, I can't disagree really. It's got to be that War Games match. The only other match that is really in contention is in my view, is probably the Flair Garvin match. But it's not. It's just not in the same league, to be honest. So it has to be the War Games. MVP.
This one was one I kind of struggled with because most of the contenders we saw in multiple matches, and I thought that everybody I thought of, like Flair, I really liked in the cage match, but as I said in the beginning of the show, had some problems with him in the first War Games and his the way he was portrayed there. So I'm actually going with Tully, the old standby for MVP. Just in the first War Games, I thought the way he did the catapult slingshot into the cage was clever.
Yeah.
In the second War Games, he utilized the cage real well again. And in the Dusty ladder match, like I said, I thought that match was actually not as horrific as you could imagine a Dusty Rhodes ladder match to be. So I think, considering the circumstances, that match turned out okay. So that's why I'm going with Tully.
Yeah, and he did do that thing where he swung from the he did a kick swinging from the cage, which is a very inventive move. So if in doubt, pick Tully Blanchard. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that was sort of my reasoning.
I'm going to go with. I think Jimmy Garvin's sal job on the leg is good enough for him to, because it's very difficult to pick out standout workers from the War Games.
Right.
So I'm going to go with Jimmy Garvin. I just think that it's, the fact that I had a question about it being a legit injury obviously means that he sold me.
Yeah, it was a great performance in that match for him. I mean, you really thought, some we really didn't talk a lot about, but you really did feel like he had a lot at stake also, being the challenger in a title match with him losing Precious. You really bought that he did not want that to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, as we'll see going forward, that match I think is the catalyst for the Ronnie Garvin Flair feud that finishes the year out. And then finally we have the Billy Graham Award.
This again I thought was kind of tough because I didn't think anybody was outright horrible on this tape, and I know we've dogged Paul Jones's Army at every single one of these releases and shows, so I'm not picking anybody there. I'm actually gonna pick Paul Ellering as my pick. I thought he added not much to either War Games match.
Yeah.
His kind of raking of the wristband or whatever in War Machine looked sort of cartoonish and not that vicious the way he did it.
Yeah.
I thought JJ clearly outclassed him as the managerial role. I would say Bubba because of his performance in the second War Games, but I thought his spot in the tag match was well done. So that's why I'll go with Paul Ellering. He didn't do anything, completely offensive, but I don't think he added much to either War Games match.
What was the tag match with Bubba in it? I can't remember now. Oh no,
well,
he
him interfering.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good spot for him, and he looked good delivering the Bossman Slam. But but yeah, I mean that is sort of grasping at straws. But
I mean, will you be upset if I pick him? Because I know you're actual real life chums with him.
No, yeah, I mean Bubba was really bad in that in that second War Games match.
I think I'm gonna go with the War Machine.
Yeah.
So I'll write it down as War Machine. So
Okay.
It's Bubba as War Machine was abysmal in that match.
Yeah,
he was slow and looked sluggish, and I didn't have to bring the match down. And given that he's the only real difference between the first match and the second match, he's dragging down that match quite a bit. So yeah, I'm gonna go with War Machine for my Billy Graham Award. So from here we have it's Starrcade, and then that's it for 1987, right?
Yeah, I think Starrcade's the next show we'll do. That'll end 1987, and then that'll put us into 1988, where things from our standpoint will get a lot busier because more pay-per-views are introduced, and also the Clash shows.
Clash of the Champions.
I'm kind of looking forward to it, but it seems like we have a long ways to go.
Yeah.
Looking ahead now.
Yeah, it's probably going to be like next Christmas by the time we get to Starrcade 88.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. We're on a decent, got some decent momentum with these two shows, so maybe we can keep it up.
Yeah, we should mention that Brian, who was doing these shows with us, is not able to take part anymore. He's got a new job and suddenly finds himself with less time to do these things, given that he has a kid as well. So thanks a lot for the stuff that you did with us, Brian. I thought your input to these shows was great, and should you ever want to come back on, there'll always be a place for you on Where the Big Boys Play.
I echo those sentiments.
So, thank you very much, Chad.
Alright, thank you. Talk to you next time, Parv.
Fans, for all of us here at WCW at Center Stage, for Cowboy Bill Watts and the American Dream Dusty Rhodes, I'm Jim Ross saying good night, everybody.